They say good fences make good neighbors. I used to believe that too, until I moved into Whispering Oaks. My name's Tyler Grant. I'm a 38-year-old Navy vet, now running a small but successful online business from my home. After spending years moving around base to base, my wife Melissa and I decided it was time to put down roots somewhere quiet and decent to raise our twin boys, Liam and Logan. We thought we found the perfect place, Whispering Oaks, a picturesque tree-lined suburban community in North Carolina with manicured lawns, tidy sidewalks, and just enough space between houses to make things comfortable. What no one tells you when you move into a place like Whispering Oaks is that it comes with a hidden government, the HOA. At first, we didn't think much of it. The Homeowners Association had a glossy welcome packet, charming committee members, and monthly newsletters that seemed more quaint than dangerous. They talked about community cohesion, neighborhood standards, and collective pride in property values. Sounded reasonable enough. We signed the papers and moved in without a second thought. The first 6 months went by peacefully. I installed a smoker out back, a beast of a grill my brother and I built together from a repurposed oil drum, and Melissa went full Martha Stewart on the backyard, planting hydrangeas, installing solar lights, and even rigging up a cute little pergola. We made friends with a couple of neighbors. The boys loved the cul-de-sac. It felt like home. Then came Memorial Day weekend. I'm a BBQ guy. Not the char some burgers and call it a day kind. I mean low and slow, hickory wood, dry rubs I've tweaked for years, briskets that fall apart with a whisper of a knife. Memorial Day was always a big deal for me, so I invited about 15 friends and family members over. Veterans, old buddies from the service, a few neighbors. Nothing crazy. No loud music, no late-night partying. Just kids running around with water balloons, folks sipping iced tea on lawn chairs, and the smell of smoked ribs drifting down the street. It was perfect. Until the Karen showed up. Every HOA has one. Ours was Sharon Beckett, vice president of the HOA and self-proclaimed guardian of the rules. A 60-something-year-old widow with a love for clipboards, peeking through blinds, and passive-aggressively worded emails. She didn't knock, didn't say hello, just marched up my driveway in her khakis and pink polo shirt like she was leading a battalion. "You're in violation of Section 12, subsection C," she barked, pointing at my smoker. "Outdoor gatherings exceeding 8 non-resident attendees must be pre-approved by the HOA committee. You didn't submit a request form." I blinked. "I'm hosting a BBQ for veterans on Memorial Day, ma'am." "That doesn't exempt you from the rules," she snapped. "And that contraption," she motioned to my smoker, "is not in compliance with fire safety regulations. It's too close to the fence line. That's another violation." I tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, I'm a certified fire inspector. This unit is built to military-grade standards. There's no danger." She scowled. "I'll be reporting this to the board." And with that, she turned and walked away like she'd just saved the neighborhood from some kind of domestic terrorism. 3 days later, I got the first fine, $250 for hosting an unauthorized outdoor gathering. 2 days after that, another notice arrived, $100 for a fire hazard in the backyard. And just to really stick it in, they tacked on $75 for a parking violation because one of my guests had temporarily parked on the street. Melissa and I were stunned. I called the HOA hotline. No answer. I emailed the board. Got an auto reply. I showed up at the next meeting and was told my complaint had to be submitted in writing and reviewed by the compliance committee. It wasn't about the money. It was the principle. They weren't protecting the neighborhood. They were harassing us. And I wasn't about to let some petty neighborhood tribunal run my life. So I fought back. When a problem smells like bureaucratic abuse, I go full tactician. The Navy didn't just train me to navigate the ocean, it taught me HOA to outmaneuver hostile forces. And make no mistake, the HOA was the enemy now. First, I gathered intelligence. I spent the next week reading every page of the HOA's covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and Rs. It was like reading the fine print of a used car loan, long, convoluted, and laced with traps. I highlighted every ambiguous phrase, cross-referenced clauses, and even called an old buddy of mine, Derek, a corporate attorney with a specialty in real estate law. "Bro," Derek said after scanning the documents, "they're bluffing on half of these. That fine for your smoker is total BS. The fire code in your county says you need to be 3 feet from any structure. You're 5. And the unauthorized gathering clause? That's weak unless the event blocked roads or created a public hazard." That's when I knew. They were enforcing interpretations of the rules, not the rules themselves. So I filed an appeal for all 3 violations. They scheduled a hearing, which turned out to be a folding table in the HOA clubhouse with Sharon, the HOA president Greg Winters, and 2 other stone-faced members staring at me like I just keyed their cars. I brought in photos, fire code documentation, a signed statement from the local fire department saying my setup was within regulation, and a notarized letter from my guest confirming they parked legally. They denied my appeal. All of it. Greg didn't even look at the papers. We've decided to uphold the fines in the interest of maintaining neighborhood standards. That was their favorite phrase, neighborhood standards. I walked out furious, but not defeated. That's when I made a decision. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. And I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to expose them. Step 1 was visibility. I created a private Facebook group called Whispering Oaks Watchdogs. At first, it was just me and 3 neighbors who'd complained about Sharon in passing. But then word spread. Fast. People started sharing stories, fines for holiday lights, threats over mailbox colors, citations for grass being too lush. One guy posted photos of Sharon standing on a ladder, peering into his backyard with binoculars. Within 2 weeks, the group had over 130 members, nearly half the community. That's when I dropped the bombshell. I posted a video from my security cameras. It was time-stamped Memorial Day, 3:42 p.m. It showed Sharon walking straight into my backyard without knocking or asking permission, snapping photos and muttering to herself. She even tried to open the smoker lid before burning her hand and cursing. The comments exploded. People were outraged. "This is trespassing. She's lost her damn mind. I got fined for a garden gnome. This explains everything." By the end of the day, Sharon deactivated her Facebook account. The HOA board issued a weak statement about privacy concerns and selective editing, but the damage was done. But I wasn't done, not even close. Step 2. Public pressure. Derek and I filed a formal complaint with the state HOA Oversight Office, citing abuse of power, harassment, and improper enforcement of fines. I also wrote an op-ed for the local community newsletter detailing my experience, not a rant, but a calm, well-documented account of how the HOA was weaponizing vague rules to control residents. But the real masterstroke? I filed a request to review the HOA's financial records. As a dues-paying homeowner, I was entitled to transparency. Legally, they had 10 business days to comply. They didn't. So Derek filed a legal motion. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Over 80 residents showed up. Sharon wasn't there. Greg looked like he hadn't slept in a week. That night, they begrudgingly handed over the books. What we found? Infuriating. Thousands of dollars spent on administrative bonuses that conveniently matched Sharon and Greg's pay. HOA funds used to renovate the clubhouse with no community vote. Fines levied against residents that never showed up as income. Money that had apparently vanished. The moment those figures hit the watchdog group, the pitchforks came out. People demanded a special election. A petition to recall the board gathered over 100 signatures in 48 hours. The HOA tried to claim procedural delay, but we had legal muscle now and community fury. Still, Greg tried one last desperate move. A cease and desist letter arrived at my door. It accused me of defamation, inciting unrest, and violating HOA confidentiality. It demanded I take down the Facebook group or face legal consequences. I posted the letter in the group. That was the final nail. Derek filed a counterclaim, and 3 other residents filed official grievances. The media got wind of the story. Local news did a feature titled BBQ and Backlash, Homeowners Fight Back. I appeared on camera in my backyard with the smoker behind me, saying, "I serve this country for the freedom to host a cookout. I won't be bullied by a neighborhood dictatorship." The next day, Greg resigned. A week later, Sharon was voted out. With Greg and Sharon both ousted, a vacuum opened at the heart of the HOA. And when chaos erupts in a community, people look for a voice of reason, someone to step up. I didn't intend to be that guy, but I wasn't about to let another mini dictator climb the ladder. At the next meeting, still packed, still tense, I stood up and announced my candidacy for HOA president. To my surprise, the room erupted in applause. "I'm not here to rule," I said. "I'm here to restore this place to what it was supposed to be. A neighborhood, not a battlefield. No more mystery fines, no more power games, no more secret spending. We're going to run this HOA like it's supposed to be run. Openly, fairly, and with the residents in charge." The other candidates didn't stand a chance. The watchdogs backed me hard. Flyers went up. A few neighbors printed T-shirts with my face and a brisket saying, "Make BBQ legal again." It was half joke, half rally cry. Election day felt like a national holiday. I won with 78% of the vote. My VP was Rachel Kim, a working mom who'd gotten fined for her kid's lemonade stand. Treasurer? David, the guy with the gnome violation. We weren't politicians. We were ticked-off homeowners with a purpose. Our first act in office? We passed the Fair Use Freedom Act. Okay, technically it was a policy reform resolution, but it sounded cool. It did 3 big things. No fines without written warning and 7-day correction period. All board spending over $500 must be voted on by residents. Any homeowner can host up to 3 non-commercial events per year with more than 8 guests, no pre-approval needed. The last one was unofficially dubbed the Tyler Clause. I had to smile at that. But fixing things wasn't just about policies. We needed healing. So I hosted another BBQ, this time officially sponsored by the HOA. We called it the Smoke and Peace Picnic, I slow-cooked 6 racks of ribs. Melissa made her famous macaroni salad, and the local high school jazz band performed under the string lights in our backyard. Over 200 people showed up. People brought dishes, shared stories, laughed together for the first time in years. It wasn't just food, it was a reset button. For a moment, Whispering Oaks was exactly what we'd all hoped for when we moved in. But it wasn't all ribs and rainbows. During cleanup, Rachel pulled me aside. "Tyler, you need to see this." She handed me a manila envelope that had been slid under the HOA office door. Inside was a flash drive and a typed letter that read, "You think the corruption ended with Greg and Sharon? Look deeper. The builders, the landscaping contracts. Look into the rezoning documents. You'll see who's really pulling the strings." That night, I opened the drive on my laptop. It contained PDFs, scanned invoices, emails, all pointing to something I hadn't seen coming: a developer backdoor deal. Turns out the original developers of Whispering Oaks had signed exclusive maintenance and landscaping contracts with a shell company, Green Trail Services LLC. On paper, it looked like a regular vendor agreement, but the documents on the flash drive showed that Greg, Sharon, and a third unknown board member were getting kickbacks, monthly payments under different consulting headers. And here's the kicker: Green Trail was charging double the standard rate for routine services. That's where the missing money had been going. Derek and I dug deeper. County records showed zoning variance requests tied to future expansion plans. The developers had plans to annex land and build Phase 2 of Whispering Oaks on the edge of protected woodland. But to push it through, they needed resident approval, or at least silence. Greg and Sharon had been part of the silence machine. I was furious. All that power tripping over grass height and mailbox colors, just a smokescreen for the real scam. But I knew I couldn't just drop this on the residents. It would cause panic. So I built a case. We cross-referenced email headers, pulled meeting notes, and matched payment cycles. Derek filed a preliminary fraud report with the county's HOA compliance division. We brought in a local investigative journalist we trusted, and we waited. 2 weeks later, the story hit the front page. Whistleblowers exposed developer payoffs in Whispering Oaks HOA scheme. The fallout was nuclear. The former treasurer, a quiet man named Alvin Reed, was revealed as the third board member in on the kickbacks. He was arrested on charges of fraud and conspiracy. Green Trail's contract was voided immediately, and we replaced them with a legitimate local landscaping service at half the cost. The developer tried to deny everything, until residents marched to the zoning office and demanded the expansion plan be halted. The county shut it down pending full investigation. We won. Again. But this time, it wasn't about BBQs or rules. It was about taking back control of our neighborhood from people who thought we wouldn't fight back. After the fraud scandal and our community's major wins, things finally calmed for about 3 weeks. That's how long peace lasted before the suits came knocking. It started with an email addressed to the HOA board with all the flair of corporate confidence. Subject: Acquisition interest in Whispering Oaks. HOA, from Apex Community Solutions, Inc. I read it 3 times to be sure. Apex was a private HOA management company, one of those giant firms that ran neighborhoods like a fast food franchise. They promised streamlined services, value optimization, and full community enhancement plans. Translation: they wanted to buy us out. The email continued. We recognize the leadership transition underway at Whispering Oaks and commend your recent efforts to restore balance. With our resources and experience, Apex can elevate your community beyond expectations, eliminating the burdens of board governance and bringing in professional management at scale. We offer $75,000 upfront for integration rights and full handling of operational infrastructure. It ended with a soft threat. If not us, another firm may move in. The market is shifting. Be first. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. They thought we'd hand over our homes for what? $75,000 and a promise? Not a chance. But Rachel wasn't laughing. Neither was David. This is serious, Rachel said. I checked them out. They've already acquired 3 neighboring communities. Each time, they dissolve the old HOA, install their own managers, and hike fees within a year. And residents can't vote them out, David added. They make everyone sign a new agreement. Basically, it's privatized governance with zero recourse. It was a hostile takeover, dressed in corporate PR. The problem? Some neighbors were intrigued, especially the ones tired of drama. A week later, Apex sent glossy pamphlets to every mailbox in the neighborhood. The front cover showed happy families walking perfectly trimmed sidewalks under fake sunlight with the words, "Let us take it from here." Inside was a bullet list of benefits. No more self-run meetings, pro-maintenance, monthly social events, digital portals, private security. Some folks bought the pitch, especially newer residents who didn't know what we'd just fought through. And that's when things got dicey. At the next HOA meeting, a small group showed up, dressed neatly, smiling politely, and formally requested we hold a vote to consider management by Apex Community Solutions. We had no legal obligation to entertain them. But we weren't about to ignore our neighbors either. So we called for a town hall forum. The night of the meeting, over 200 people packed the community center. It was standing room only. Derek live-streamed it on Facebook, just in case anyone misremembered what was said later. First up, Apex sent a regional rep, Ronald Banks. He wore a navy blazer, crisp shirt, white teeth, and an attitude like he was doing us a favor. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, pacing like a TED speaker, "Whispering Oaks is at a crossroads. You've done great work. Grassroots, community-driven, admirable. But at what cost? Tensions, lawsuits, division. You're homeowners, not politicians. Let us lift the burden." I raised my hand. "Mind if I ask a few questions, Mr. Banks?" "Of course," he smiled, already smug. I kept my voice calm. "If Apex takes over, will we still have an elected board?" "No," he said. "You'll have a professional operations manager. Can residents vote to remove that manager if we don't like the decisions?" "Number. But we have an annual feedback process. Can we reverse course later if we want out?" He paused. "Number. The management agreement is permanent. It becomes part of the community deed structure." I looked around the room. The smiles faded. "Just to clarify," I continued, "you're offering us $75,000 one time, then charging us ongoing fees we don't control, while removing our voting rights, our board, and our autonomy." Banks started to answer, but I cut him off. "One last thing. You guys acquired Timber Ridge last year, right?" He nodded. "A successful project." "Funny," I said, pulling out a stack of printed reviews. "Because these residents don't agree. Fees doubled. Security was a joke. We lost all say in our neighborhood. And my favorite, they banned porch swings for not fitting the community brand." Murmurs spread through the room. Ronald tried to recover, but it was too late. The residents of Whispering Oaks weren't stupid. We'd been burned once. We weren't about to get roasted again. The next day, a resident-wide vote shot down the Apex proposal with a 93% rejection rate. Still, we weren't done. If Apex had our address, so would other companies. We needed safeguards. So we amended our bylaws. No external management company could be contracted without a 90% supermajority vote from all homeowners, not just a meeting quorum. And no contract over 5 years could be signed without open public negotiation. That shut the door for good. But something else happened after that. I started getting calls from neighboring communities, people who'd seen the Apex showdown online. A woman from Green Pines HOA asked, "How'd you take your power back? We're dealing with a board president who fined a disabled veteran for installing a wheelchair ramp." A dad from South Creek said, "Our HOA tried to block us from building a community garden. Can you talk to our board?" I didn't expect it, but I suddenly became a local HOA reform guy. So I leaned in. With Derek's help, we launched a simple website, hoareclaim.org, part blog, part toolkit. We posted sample bylaws, how to hold emergency meetings, tips on exposing financial abuse. We even uploaded a recording of my barbecue story that started it all. Within months, dozens of communities reached out. Some just wanted advice. Others invited me to speak. A few asked me to help them fight back. I never charged a dime. Whispering Oaks stayed my home. I wasn't running for state office or anything, but we had become something rare, a success story, and I wasn't about to waste that. By now, Whispering Oaks was no longer just a neighborhood. It had become a symbol, a beacon for homeowners everywhere, fed up with overreach, secret fees, and board bullies. But the fight wasn't over. One morning, I got an unexpected call from a state representative's office. The rep, Jenna Morales, had heard about our battle and wanted to meet. Jenna was sharp, pragmatic, and passionate about community rights. Over coffee, she explained, "Tyler, what you and your neighbors did is incredible. But across the state, HOAs are a mess. There are zero consistent rules protecting homeowners from abusive boards or corporate takeovers like Apex." She pulled out a thick binder of notes. "We're drafting legislation to regulate HOAs more strictly. Financial transparency, limits on fines, protections for events like your BBQ, and tougher rules on management companies." I leaned forward. "How can I help? Your story is powerful. We want you to testify in the legislature as a homeowner advocate." Over the next few months, I worked closely with Jenna's team, providing documentation, data, and first-hand accounts. I met other HOA reform leaders and learned about the diversity of issues across urban and rural communities. Finally, the day came. Standing in the state capitol building, I looked out over the committee room packed with legislators, lobbyists, and media. My heart pounded, but I remembered the neighbors who had fought beside me. I told them HOAs were created to protect communities, not to silence us, fine us unfairly, or strip our rights. We're homeowners, neighbors, and families. We deserve clear rules, transparency, and the freedom to gather without fear. The committee listened. They asked tough questions. Some were skeptical, but when I showed video of the Smoke and Peace picnic, photos of the illegal fines, and the fraud documents, the mood shifted. Jenna's bill, called the Homeowner Protection Act, passed with bipartisan support. The law mandated transparent budgeting and public access to all HOA financials. limits on the amount and frequency of fines, the right to host community events without excessive pre-approval, restrictions on outside management companies and how contracts are approved, clear appeal processes for homeowners facing violations. When it was signed by the governor, we threw a party in Whispering Oaks to celebrate. That day, I reflected on the journey, from a simple BBQ that sparked a fine to a neighborhood uprising to statewide reform. But maybe the biggest victory wasn't the law. It was the change in our community spirit. Neighbors were volunteering for committees again. Kids played on sidewalks. Porch lights glowed with welcome. Our HOA meetings became forums for ideas, not fear. And every year, the Smoke and Peace picnic grew bigger. What started as one man's fight became a movement about community, respect, and the right to live free. With the Homeowner Protection Act now law, Whispering Oaks wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a movement in action. The HOA board restructured, electing new members committed to transparency and fairness. Rachel became the new president, David handled finances, and I stayed involved as a community liaison. We held regular open meetings where everyone was encouraged to speak freely. The vibe was night and day compared to before. Neighbors who once kept to themselves were now volunteering to organize events, maintain landscaping, and even create neighborhood watch groups. One afternoon, as I was setting up for the annual Smoke and Peace picnic, Mrs. Henderson, my elderly next-door neighbor, stopped by with a plate of homemade cookies. "You really changed things here, Tyler," she said softly. "Not just for me, but for my grandchildren. It feels like home again." Her words hit me hard. That was exactly what I wanted. To restore that feeling of belonging. The story of Whispering Oaks caught the attention of local and national media. I gave interviews, podcasts, and even a few TEDx talks on HOA reform. Other states started reaching out, asking for help drafting similar legislation. Soon, a nonprofit coalition called Neighborhood Voices was born, connecting homeowners nationwide to share resources, legal advice, and success stories. Despite all the new attention, my motivation stayed simple: to protect the right of neighbors to gather, celebrate, and live free without fear of petty tyrants. Years later, as I watched families laughing and kids running around at the Smoke and Peace picnic, I thought back to the day it all started. A simple backyard BBQ that turned into a battle. The fight taught me that change starts small but can grow if you stand up and refuse to back down. Whispering Oaks became proof that even against bureaucracy and corporate power, a community united by respect and courage can win.